Buddy, David here from Mojo, and in this overview video, I'm going to cover an update to your system that's going to happen tomorrow, Friday, October 20th. This update is going to center around action plans. Over the last year, we've received a ton of feedback on what you like about action plans, what you don't like, what improvements we can make. In this latest update that's going to come out tomorrow is going to be an all-inclusive update where we took all of the feedback that was voted on in our support forums and incoming on our support lines. We package it up and we're going to release it. So there's some pretty big changes coming, and whether you're a single agent or a multi-agent team, we feel you're really going to like these changes. For those of you looking for an all-inclusive CRM platform with prospecting components like a dialer and the data, everything we want Mojo to be, you're going to find what you're looking for starting tomorrow. So let's dive in with just some bullet points of what we've done before I go in and kind of demonstrate some of the functionality. The first thing we did is we came out with a new layout for creating action plans. We've decluttered it. We've turned it into a multi-slide user interface, which makes things much simpler than the current state that it's in now. The other thing we've done is we've included something called strict order logic. So this is going to allow you to create action plans with steps that don't schedule or show you future steps until the existing current step is completed. So for those of you that tend to pop into Mojo every day to prospect, but maybe you only do follow-up 2 or 3 times a week, you're not going to find a bunch of past due steps in your Mojo account because, again, strict order is not going to schedule those until you're done the current step. That was a huge request. The other thing we've done is we've added something called date-based scheduling. So in the current form, action plans are frequency-based. It's based off a certain amount of days each step from the time you schedule or assign that action plan to somebody. An example would be a phone call on day 0. An email on day 3, another phone call on day 5, a task on day 7. You get the idea. With date-based, you're actually going to be able to choose the date for the step to take place. So the calendar date. And an example might be, maybe you have a drip email campaign that goes out for holidays. You'll be able to create that now, and it'll go out when you want it to based on the calendar day of the holiday. The other thing we've done is we've added the ability to have trigger groups. So in its current state with action plans, you have to manually assign the action plan. A huge request was the ability to auto-assign an action plan based on group assignment. So if you assign someone to a group, that can be a trigger now for an action plan, and the system will do the heavy lifting and automatically assign it. You can now assign 2 action plans to a contact. So getting back to that holiday example I gave, you can now have unique independent action plans for follow-up. And then you can have a second action plan that's kind of catch-all for your holiday emails that go out. And again, that is because you can now assign 2 action plans to a single contact. And lastly, we've added something called the email status column to the contacts grid for those who are assigned to certain action plans. So you can go through your various action plans, and if there's any email steps in the action plan, you'll be able to see the email status. And a great way to use this to make you more efficient and streamlined is you'd be able to go in and remove or delete anybody from an action plan who has either clicked the spam button when they received an email from you, or the email resulted in a failed response because that email address is no longer any good. So now that I've covered the bullet points, let's show you how it looks to create an action plan now. I'm going to go up to Settings, Marketing, and it's going to drop me off right on my action plans. You can see here, we've already got some action plans in the system. What I want to show off is how we create them now, the new user interface. So I'm going to click on Create. And when I do that, the first thing I'm going to have to do is give it a name. I'm going to call it Video Action Plan number 1. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is, you can see here, there's 4 unique steps. So this slide, we need to name it. We need to give it a scheduling type, whether it's frequency-based or date-based, which I'll touch on in a minute again. You can choose your scheduling logic, whether it's strict order or non-strict order, which non-strict order is how it is now. You can choose to send or assign steps on weekends or not. So I'm going to leave everything as default because this is how it works today. These are the different choices, or the only choices you have today. Click next. And now I'm going to give it some steps. So because I left it to the default frequency based, it's asking me for a day. So I'm going to say on day 0, make a phone call, so it's the day it's assigned. Then I'm going to say another phone call on day 3 after it's assigned. And, we'll just say an email with the email template. I'll just pick a bogus one here. And we'll say that's going to go out on day 10. All right, so I just created a really simple action plan. Now I'm on slide number 2. Slide number 3, this is where we can choose to have it assigned to a this is where we can choose to have a trigger group, where if I add a contact to a group, it auto-assigns this action plan. For this case, again, I'm going to default to how it is today, which is none. And then we're going to choose our end logic. This is the last and final step of creating an action plan. And I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to say do nothing. And I'm going to go ahead and click save. So there we have it. Much easier, much more streamlined, less confusing way of creating an action plan. But again, we've added some other things to action plans. So let's go in and take a look at them. I'm going to go ahead and click create again. And this time I'm going to choose date-based. Well, actually, I got to give it a name. Video Action Plan 2. This time I'm going to choose date-based. And what that means is, instead of a frequency, the amount of days after it's assigned, that I want a certain step to take place, I'm going to choose my option from a calendar. And instead of non-strict order, I'm going to choose strict order. You won't see this demonstrated today, naturally, but know that that's an option. And again, strict order is not going to allow future steps to be scheduled on your planner and your calendar until you've completed the current or existing step. And then the weekend option, I'll leave it as no, only because it defaults to that, because it's date-based. Where it's date-based, if you enter a date that falls on a weekend, that overrides whether or not things can be scheduled on a weekend. So what's changed on step 2? Not much. You can still choose your step. Phone call, I could choose a calling script, but I won't. But now, when you click in here, it asks specifically for a date. So I'm going to say, just for the heck of it, the 24th. Next step is going to be an email. And, again, I'll just pick a bogus one here. And that's going to happen on, I don't know, we'll say the 1st, Veterans Day. Maybe we have a Veterans Day email that goes out. All right, so again, to keep this simple in this video shorter than normal, I'm just going to stop there. But you can see the key difference is I'm entering a date and not a frequency, not an amount of days, not a value for how many days after it's assigned to the contact. I'm using a date. Click next. And this time, I'm going to choose a trigger group. Now, these are the available groups in the system that I have: future follow-up, hot lead, listing, and warm lead. Very simple. You probably have a lot more groups than that, and that's okay. They'll cascade down in this drop-down. I'm going to say here that anybody that I put to listing is going to automatically get assigned to this action plan. And all that means is, if I'm following a good lead workflow in Mojo, I'm taking people from my calling list or my properties calling list that I've qualified by using the dialer, and then I'm purifying my list. I'm taking that qualified lead or contact out of my calling list so I don't keep prospecting them, and I'm assigning them to the appropriate group. And from there, hopefully I'm assigning an action plan so I can complete some follow-up. 2 different speeds. We've got our prospecting, we've got our follow-up. So in this case, anyone that I move from a list to the group listing will automatically get this assigned. So I'm going to click next. I missed a key element here. The other thing we added, because we know the importance of this, is we added the option to remove from action plan if the contacts are removed from the specified group. So an example, let's use listings. Let's say you have an action plan that includes emails that go out targeting somebody who's a listing. But when that home sells, when you sell that home, they become, let's say, a past client. That messaging might change. So you wouldn't want them to keep receiving emails from you targeting the listing client once they're a past client. So you might check this box. And once that contact goes from the group listing into the group, let's say you have past client, hopefully you do, then this would come off and they'd stop getting this content. So I'm going to click next. You choose end logic, real simple. We can do nothing. We can repeat the current action plan. We can cascade into a different action plan when it ends. These are all things you can do today. Hopefully you're taking advantage of it. And more recently, we added the ability to automatically assign to a group. And I'm going to cover that here. Even though it's been in Mojo, I want to make sure you guys understand the importance of this. So many times you're going to work contacts that you've qualified through action plans once you put them into a group. And again, they show up in the calendar area of Mojo. At some point, you may not get a hold of that person again. So let's say you have a hot lead action plan with 10 phone calls in it, and they're pretty rigorous. They're every other day you're calling this person using the follow-up calling dialer. Well, once that ends, you may want to discard that contact or that lead. And a lot of you have a group either called Dead Lead or Archive. So we want to automate this as much as possible for you and do as much of the heavy lifting as we can. So this assigned group is great in that case. If I had a group called Archive, I could choose it here and leave this checkbox checked. And once all the steps of this action plan have been completed, I may think in my workflow, I'm all done with that lead. I want to archive it. If I haven't got them on the phone and qualified them into a different action plan or a different group, by the time this action plan ends, when it ends, move it to the archive group so it's not in my face anymore. Now all I have to do is I can click Save. So there we have it. That's how it works. A super streamlined way to create your action plans. And again, I just demonstrated the strict order logic, how to use it, how to check the box, gave you the explanation, how to select your date-based events from the calendar, how to choose a trigger group and why. Now what we need to talk about is the ability to apply 2 action plans to a contact. The 2 action plans to a contact is very simple. You can either assign 2 manually or from the contact record, or you can do it in bulk from the data and dialer screen using our marketing button. And what will happen is, once you have one assigned, you can go to choose to assign another action plan. And it's going to give you the option, do you want to replace the current action plan, or are you looking to add this additional action plan so that you move forward with 2 action plans? If you've already got 2 action plans assigned and you go to add a third, it's going to ask you to choose which one you're going to replace and to move forward with 2. We've thought of it all. We look forward to your feedback on that. Last but not least, we talked about email status column in the review action plan area, in the review contacts area of your action plans. What does that mean? Once you have a contact assigned to an action plan, in the action plan grid, you're going to begin to see a new 3 horizontal line icon. And this indicates that there are people assigned to that action plan. Click on it, and what you'll be presented with are all the different entries, all the different contacts that are in that specific action plan. And you'll see there's a new email status column. Now, none of these folks have an email address because it's part of our a test list that every user gets inside of Mojo. But if I had email addresses on these, and there were emails, let's say it was a drip email specific action plan, all the steps were drip email, I naturally wouldn't want to keep a bunch of people in that list that either have clicked spam or the email has failed. So I would see the email status in this column. And I could simply highlight the folks that are either spam or failed, and I can remove them from the action plan, or I can assign them to another action plan. And the great thing is, with our sorting capability, you can sort the email status column, and it will group together all of the faileds and the spams, and then you can do a control click and select them all, and again, either remove them from the action plan or assign them to another action plan. Maybe that's phone calls only. That's going to wrap up this overview video. We really look forward to your feedback on this 3rd phase of action plans. We've done a great job taking all of your input and making the changes you've been requesting. Again, that's going to wrap up this video. Until next time, make it a great day.